When retired Air Force veteran Robert Hensley built a fence on his property, he never imagined it would unleash a nightmare that would change his life forever. His home was demolished on the orders of a corrupt HOA president, Thomas Carver, a smug bureaucrat who thought he could crush a man's life with forged documents and a bulldozer. But Robert wasn't the type to surrender. With fire in his heart, he rallied a nation, unleashed the full force of the law, and made his enemies pay for every splinter they destroyed. What unfolded was a battle so intense, so gripping, that it left jaws on the floor and sparked debates across the country. Buckle up, this is the story of how one man's fight brought a crooked HOA to its knees and delivered justice most unforgettably. Robert Hensley, 63, was a man forged by discipline and sacrifice. For 25 years he served in the U.S. Air Force, enduring combat zones and relentless missions, always putting country first. Now, in a quiet Texas suburb, he sought peace. His modest home had a front porch for morning coffee, a backyard for a planned vegetable garden, and a sturdy new wooden fence for privacy. It wasn't grand, but it was his sanctuary, until the morning it all came crashing down. Robert woke to what felt like an earthquake. The house shook, a guttural rumble filling the air. Heart pounding, he stumbled out of bed, thinking it might be road work or a neighbor's project gone wrong. Still in pajama pants and an old Air Force t-shirt, he flung open the front door and froze. A massive yellow bulldozer loomed on his lawn, its engine growling like a beast ready to strike. A group of men stood nearby, clipboards in hand, exuding unchecked authority. At their center was Thomas Carver, HOA president, in a cheap suit, his smirk dripping with arrogance. Robert had never dealt with him directly. He didn't even think he was part of the HOA. Mr. Hensley, Carver said, his voice laced with fake courtesy. You violate HOA policy. Robert's eyes narrowed. What the hell are you talking about? Carver gestured lazily toward the new fence, built with Robert's own hands over 2 grueling weekends. That, he said, doesn't meet our community aesthetic. Robert's blood ran cold. My fence? On my land? I don't answer to you. Carver's smirk widened, and he tapped his clipboard. You're mistaken. Your property was annexed into the HOA last year. You must have missed the notice. Before Robert could respond, the bulldozer roared to life, its steel blade lunging forward. The impact was catastrophic, a sickening crack as wood, metal, and glass shattered. The front porch collapsed like paper, debris flying everywhere. Windows exploded, walls buckled, and the house groaned as it was torn apart. Robert stood paralyzed, watching his life disintegrate. His military medals, earned through decades of service, were buried under rubble. His late wife's rocking chair, her handwritten letters, their photo albums, gone in an instant. His chest tightened, rage and grief colliding as Carver watched, unbothered, like this was just another day. You son of a... Robert's voice trembled, his fists clenched. Carver sighed, feigning sympathy. Unfortunate, but necessary. You can apply for an HOA-approved rebuild. Something snapped inside Robert. He'd faced enemies before, but this was cowardice cloaked in power. He wouldn't let it stand. The wreckage of Robert's home smoldered as neighbors flooded the street, their faces a mix of shock and fury. Jesus, they destroyed his house! One shouted. Phones recorded the chaos, voices rising in outrage. Mrs. Larson, the elderly woman next door, clutched her chest, tears streaming. This is illegal! Someone yelled. But Carver and his HOA cronies stood unfazed, brushing off the crowd like pesky flies. Carver's smirk as he dusted his suit pushed Robert to the edge. This wasn't a mistake, it was deliberate. Robert's vision blurred with rage, but he held back. He'd survived worse than this, and he knew how to fight. Stalking to his battered Ford truck, he grabbed his phone and made 2 calls. First, to Colonel John Matthews, a retired military lawyer who'd dismantled corrupt systems like a predator on the hunt. What trouble you in now, Hensley? Matthews chuckled, but his tone hardened when Robert growled. They bulldozed my house. Silence then. I'm on my way. The second call was to the press. Robert knew power only crumbled under public pressure. He sent photos, videos, and documents to local and national news, then reached out to veteran groups for good measure. The fight was no longer just his. Within hours, news vans swarmed the wreckage. Robert stood amid the rubble, cameras flashing, microphones in his face. The HOA destroyed my home over a fence, he said, voice like steel. I was never part of their HOA, but they forged documents to claim I was. They think they can walk away. They're wrong. His raw fury resonated, and the story exploded online. Headlines screamed, "Veterans home bulldozed over fence." Heartless HOA leaves hero homeless. Social media erupted, with millions of views and thousands of comments. Protesters stormed the HOA's office, waving signs, "Justice for Robert," and "Stop HOA tyranny." The mayor called it a disgusting abuse of power. A senator demanded an investigation. The pressure was relentless, but Robert wasn't done. When Matthews arrived, he carried a stack of legal documents and a grin that promised pain. "These bastards are done," he said, scanning the rubble. The lawsuit hit like a missile: fraud, property destruction, criminal misconduct. Then came the bombshell. Matthews uncovered years of HOA corruption. They'd forged documents, annexed properties without consent, and extorted homeowners with illegal fines. Robert wasn't their first victim, but he'd be their last. The case went federal, with the FBI sniffing around. Months later, Robert sat in a packed courtroom, eyes locked on Carver and his sweating HOA board. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, silenced the room with a single gavel tap. Her voice was ice as she read the verdict. The Oak Ridge HOA is guilty of fraud, property destruction, illegal annexation, and conspiracy to extort homeowners. Robert's grip tightened on his chair. The judge's gaze pinned Carver. "Mr. Carver, you orchestrated this fraud, falsified notices, and authorized the unlawful demolition of Mr. Hensley's home. Your actions end here." The hammer fell. The HOA was dissolved, its accounts frozen, its property seized. Robert was awarded $2.5 million, enough to rebuild and never fight again. Carver got 5 years in federal prison for fraud and destruction. The courtroom erupted, gasps, cheers, and stunned silence. Carver slumped, broken, as Robert leaned forward and whispered, "Looks like I followed the rules after all." For the first time, Robert felt peace. Stepping outside, Robert was met by a roaring crowd, neighbors, veterans, strangers, all chanting his name. Signs read "Hero" and "Justice served." A young woman shook his head, tears in her eyes. "You're a legend, Mr. Hensley." He nodded. "Just did what was right." A reporter asked, "What's next?" Robert smirked. "I'm rebuilding my home, without an HOA." The crowd cheered, and justice tasted sweet. This story isn't just about one man's fight, it's a battle cry against unchecked power. Was Robert's relentless pursuit of justice heroic or obsessive? Should he have compromised with the HOA to avoid the chaos? And what about Carver's smug cruelty? Was it malice or just blind bureaucracy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share your take on this explosive saga and whether you'd stand and fight like Robert. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell to never miss a story this gripping. Let's keep the conversation blazing.